Hi, my name is Patricio Molina, composer and pianist, and director of the conservatory at the Newark School of the Arts. Each week, we talk to a composer to learn about their creative process, life, and work. Today's guest is Jimmy Roberts, known for his work in the musical theater field. Jimmy Roberts started his composition career as I did, as a pianist at the Manhattan School of Music. He studied with my musical grandmother, the legendary piano teacher Constance Keane. Jimmy Roberts is mainly known for his work I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change, nominated for Best Musical by several critics. It became the second longest running show on Broadway with 6,000 performances. As a pianist and performer, Jimmy Roberts devises programs that blend classical and popular music, including Gershwin and Broadway, comedy and song. Today, we talk about the beginnings of Jimmy's composition career, starting as a classical concert pianist and absorbing composition in his 20s. We talk about what it takes to become a composer, what drew Jimmy to the American musical theater, and his new musical, Welcome to the Big Dipper.
At the end of the road, there's a bend in the road, and it leads to a place that will lessen your load. I'll be there in the night, and the lamplight will guide you straight to my door. I'm your sanctuary. Now you know there's rest for the weary, shelter from the rain and snow, sanctuary, and wherever you roam, there's a light and a heart always waiting for you to come home. There's a light and a heart always waiting for you to come home.
Wow, Jimmy, what a wonderful song. And that's from your new show, Welcome to the Big Dipper. What a wonderful song, and what a great voice she has. So I am so thrilled that you can be with us today. And I know many people know you, Jimmy, but for those who do not, Jimmy is an acclaimed pianist, composer, and cabaret performer. His show, I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change, is the second longest running off-Broadway show written with playwright Joe DiPietro. It's been performed in all 50 states, 25 countries, and recently is a big budget Chinese film. Jimmy also won the Outer Critics Circle Award for his show, The Thing About Men. He is a sought-after performer whose concert includes both classical and Broadway repertoire, and has been heard in concert at the 92nd Street Y. Merkin Hall, is a recipient of our Shining Star Award from the Newark School of the Arts, and has also given us a wonderful masterclass on Bernstein. Jimmy is a graduate of the Manhattan School of Music, where he studied with acclaimed pianist Constance Keane. He's also a poet who has been published in the New York Times, and his new poem, My Day, about the pandemic, was recently featured in Trolley, the online journal of the NYS Writers Institute. So Jimmy, welcome. I am so glad that you're here today. And I wanted to begin by asking you, at what point did you know you had the gift to compose?
Yes, I love that question. It hasn't been ever asked, really, Nadine. And because I began as a pianist, and I played by ear, I mean, you'll often hear that a lot from composers. They were picking things out by ear. When the Gershwin family bought a upright piano for the two brothers, I think it was for the older brother Ira to study piano, but it was George whose ear led him to want to duplicate sounds at the keyboard. And I did the same thing. But I still thought of myself as a pianist. I would say,
Mhm.
yes. In my 20s, I realized I had this notion that, hey, why can't I, join the club of composers and create something myself out of all I've learned and what I know? So kind of late teens, early 20s. And the first few things I did were, in the style of the classical composers whose pieces I was playing. And then a little later, I think I would fall in love and have crushes, and I'd need to express it musically with
Mhm.
new words as well as music, too. And for this, going up to the present for this current show, I'm doing both the lyrics and the music for Welcome to the Big Dipper.
Wow.
Yeah, so of course, those are two different functions. Many theater pieces have two people splitting those duties, lyrics and music, and you need both to have a powerful song. And that great lyricist Yip Harburg, who wrote "Summer Over the Rainbow" and "Finian's Rainbow,"
Oh,
and
yes.
any song with a rainbow, he he defined a song this way. He said, "Why is it so powerful?" He says, "Because music makes you feel feelings. Words make you think thoughts. But
Wow.
a song makes you feel a thought."
Hmm.
Uh, so that's kind of my answer to when I started composing.
Now, what was your early music like? You said that you were doing some, music that sounded like the pieces that you were performing. Do you ever go back and perform those pieces, or they're left
Yeah,
behind?
better left behind. There was just like in the style. I thought, well, if Mozart could write in that style, so can I. And I would do an Alberti bass and something that was my own melody, but nothing. Uh, I think we all try to first imitate what turns us on. And I also went to a music summer camp at my late teens and was so influenced by the choral program there that I came back and wrote a choral piece based on an Elizabeth Barrett Browning poem, and my high school choir performed it. So that was one of my first pieces, too.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Becoming a pianist first, did that help you to become a composer? Or, what does it take to become a composer?
Right. Well, I think it did help because it gave me a facility to kind of have as a background for anything I did. And frankly, when I write my shows, I am almost tortured by the fact that I know and so much about piano and have a decent enough technique that I must notate the music in that style. So it becomes A, difficult for me to notate because it's complex, and B,
Mhm.
difficult for other pianists to play. And I met one who said to me, "I have to admit, I took your name in vain during the dance music of so and so." But um, now, what was the question? I forgot about.
So, what does it take to become a composer?
Well, I think in any creative field, eventually, what it takes is a self-criticism muscle. So
Mhm.
you have inspiration and you try to get it out there, whether you're writing words or fiddling around on the keyboard. Uh, but then you come back, at least in my process, and you think what of this is really new, fresh, what of this is imitative, what have I've done is making this thing too long or not clear, uh, what will strike somebody else as, oh, I've heard this before, and all those are the things you get rid of, and you kind of chip it away and sculpt away till you have the essence of something you hope is original and
Mhm.
effective for what you're trying to do.
Mhm. Well, what was it in the American musical theater that drew you towards that genre?
I always thought it was because I always had a dichotomy and even a confusion in my life between so-called pop music and
Hmm.
music. You know, in the old days, that was always a big dividing line. When George Gershwin told his teacher he wanted to play jazz, it was like, no, 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 you must learn, counterpoint and everything. Ironically, Gershwin eventually studied counterpoint and things because he realized he needed that to write his symphony.
Right.
But I found that theater was the great melting pot of both those styles. I mean, uh, most theater music has an element, I think, of classical and of
Yeah.
course pop and jazz. So I felt very
Hmm.
in why I liked it, and also I guess why I compose for it.
Hmm.
I would make a further comment though that if you're composing for theater, whether you're an educated composer or not, Irving Berlin didn't even know what key he played in, and
Right.
he wrote everything in G flat, as a matter of fact, and he had a transposing because his hands fit most on the G, the upper notes there, they're black notes.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
but you have to have the sense of theatricality, of drama, a humor that you want to express musically. So it's not about making the most beautiful symphony piece or the most complex piece or the most uh, if it's a pop piece, the most uh, bouncy and rhythmic. I mean, you want to do all those things, but always for the story you're telling, that's what distinguishes theater music and the character you're writing the songs for. And if you think about any Broadway show, more than any piano sonata, though piano sonatas have character and moods, but I
Yes.
mean, for a show, if you just looked at the list of songs on a cast album, just about 75 to 80% are individuals or do two people with let's say a problem or a feeling or something happy, but it's a person expressing a feeling to another person. So that's what writing for the theater is about.
Yes.
And how
Patricio?
is the process of composing, the feeling of other people? What do you do? Where do you find the inspiration to do this?
Very good question, right? Because again, it's two heads. There's the person who writes the words of the song and the person who writes the music. Sometimes it's the same person, but it's two different functions. Irving Berlin wrote music and words. Stephen Sondheim writes words and music. And people always say, what comes first, the words or the music? And everybody jokes, generally the contract, or the. But uh, as the composer, the musical composer, one way is you often might get inspiration from the words if they come first to you from your lyricist or even from yourself if you've done them first. So, in other words, you've got words on a page that are saying feelings in language, in word language, and then yes, it is a kind of a magic. How do you turn that into a musical piece? you know and it's you have to be a little sophisticated about it. For instance, let's
Right.
you see some sad lyrics. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you should write a dirge or a minor key song, which might just you know send us all into a depression by everything. So your music can sometimes work against the lyrics to point them out more. Uh, Sometimes I've done minor chords in theater and I go, oh my God, that's just too minor, too sad. It's just funny the power of major and minor. Uh,
Yes.
so then I realized maybe do a mixed chord that's not so minor because I realize it actually has a effect on the body. I feel it myself. And but in other words, things like that to modulate a mood. Uh, I mean, generally, if it's a happy song, it's probably going to have a bit of more of a beat. And if it's a love song, it's depends on the type of love. It's, you know, if somebody says, I'm falling in love, or I'm just discovering it, that might be up. There's a song from the Rothschilds, and the singer goes, he must have got the words from the lyricist, the composer. It says, I'm in love, but it's with exclamation points because he's just realizing it. So the music goes, I'm in love, da, 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 da. Let's take the nuance of Carousel, the Broadway show, when two people are sitting on a park bench and they're too uncomfortable to reveal how they're really feeling. So they do it in terms of a conditional word, if. So the lyric
Right.
usually came first was, well, if I loved you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know that they do, the man, they do love each other, but they can't say it directly.
Yeah.
Now the
Well,
music
Jim,
is like a hymn. It's expressing what's inside their hearts in that case. So it's lyrical, and it's a little bit and it's great because the music says, I do love you.
yeah.
But the words say, if I loved you. So you're whole psychological layers.
Well, I wanted to ask you, you know, when I heard Sondheim interviewed a couple years ago, was it someone from NPR? He asked Sondheim, what show or what piece of musical theater do you consider the absolute greatest piece? And I'm going to ask you the same question, Jimmy. Is there any one piece you feel is the greatest piece of American musical theater written?
So I know you mentioned that, and by the way, I'm curious what Sondheim said.
I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, thought it might have been Porgy and Bess.
Correct. Porgy and Bess is exactly what he said.
Yeah, I would also. I was thinking of three: Porgy and Bess, West Side Story, Sondheim's own show, Follies.
Yes.
And I was thinking West Side Story, I guess I love for the music, and who doesn't? But you know, it's just,
yes.
But I guess Sondheim's Follies, I love for what I love theater for, the whole story and what's going on stage and how the music is part of that. You know, it kind of takes place just on one night in a theater that's about to be torn down. I mean, that's theatrical.
Yes, absolutely. And are there any great iconic musical composers you've met in your lifetime? Speaking of Bernstein.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I was going to say I met them all, or quite a few, or near them or with them. And Bernstein is definitely one. And I had an encounter with him at a party, which was hosted by, not to drop names, Adolph Green.
Wow.
And Sondheim was at that party too. So at the end of the night, most guests, I was the pianist at the party. And Lenny was in another room, and I was introduced to him, and he said, "That was you. I thought it was Cy Coleman on the piano." You know, and then we kind of made friends in a way, and we talked late into the night. And the last two people at the party were Leonard Bernstein, Stephen Sondheim, and me. Oh my God!
Wow!
And you know, we talked, and Bernstein looks you in the eye and talks about love and your background. He wants to psychoanalyze you practically.
Wow.
And Sondheim was a bit of a shyer person, but also communicative in his own way. And went down in the elevator with them from this apartment house in New York. And Lenny said, "Keep in touch." And based on that, I wrote a note to him and sent it to the Dakota. And many years later, I went with a friend to the Library of Congress just to look at Bernstein's correspondence over the years from Copland, everybody. And there in the 1980 collection was my letter. He had saved it.
Wow. That's amazing.
And most of the composers I met were not really nice people. And he was, Steve Sondheim was. I met John Kander, a wonderful composer once, very kind. Stephen Schwartz,
Uh-huh.
Wicked and Pippin, very giving, and he ran a course in the ASCAP about writing for musical theater. And I even did meet Cy Coleman, also very nice. I
Hmm.
guess a few of them were insecure, uh, but and may have had bad moments, but most of these gentlemen were amazing. And it
Wonderful.
was exciting to me to know people. I met Burton Lane, who wrote On a Clear Day, and he knew George Gershwin. In fact, I think it was Burton Lane who discovered Judy Garland as the Gum Sisters and brought it to the attention of MGM.
Wow.
If just talking to you and all the friendships that you've made in your lifetime, it feels like you're part of this golden age of music in a way.
Uh,
And it's just beautiful to hear, to have you here and share your experiences with so many great names. You
yeah,
know, talking about this beautiful golden age sort of era. You are, tell us about what you're working on today. Any projects?
thank you. Yeah, it's turned into just one that occupies my whole heart and soul. And as Nadine mentioned, it's called Welcome to the Big Dipper, and that's a newish title for a older project. Uh,
Hmm.
so when it's in fact it's been many years now, like 8 to 10 years. It's mostly a collaboration of my two people and me, and the three of us together do the book, script, story, and I do the lyrics and the music, and the two
Hmm.
book. And we meet and talk and talk. And this is a story that was a play by one of the by the women of our collaborative team that we've turned into a musical. And let me tell you, the process, and I think any composers will tell you, is fascinating and arduous. I've thrown out an entire score of this already and
Wow.
from scratch. you know, because as your story gets more clear, you realize the songs you once loved are no longer really saying what you want to say. And if you're smart, you'll let them go. In this field, they say sometimes you have to murder your darlings. uh, so, as I say, it's called Welcome to the Big Dipper. It refers to a fictional hotel in a fictional town in upstate New York. We named the town Bigelow, New York, and
Uh-huh.
it was originally Buffalo, but we found Buffalo people are very sensitive about their city. So we didn't want to mess with that. So we moved it up north to Bigelow near Niagara Falls, where there's an African American owned hotel called the Big Dipper Inn. And
Wow.
on a particular night when Joan, our innkeeper, has decided to sell so she can send Des, her son, to USC, and there's no business anyway, comes another ferocious upstate New York storm. And because of that, there's an accident on the nearby highway. It happens to be between a charter bus carrying a bunch of male cross dressers and a
Oh my
van
God.
carrying an Amish family. So the cross dressers in the Amish family, nobody's really injured, but the vehicles are disabled. And the New York State Police come and bring these two groups, transport them to the nearest hotel, which is the Big Dipper Inn. And they say, come on, the state will reimburse you, please. And Joan, our heroine, has to put up these two groups. And our story is what happens to these people over the next 3 days and nights.
Sounds wonderful. Wonderful.
And it gets into some real interesting issues, and I've learned a lot.
Hmm.
Talk about writing for character. What's it like to write for an African American sensibility, or a transgender woman, let's say, uh,
Right.
or a cross-dressing man who doesn't want to tell his wife and is hiding
Wow.
from him? These are songs, and I've had to sometimes take some advice from these very people. They're saying, no, don't do that, or don't do that cliche about black people, or don't do that cliche about the trans wants the operation. That's every. So you really have to write about real characters, not just cliches, and that's very important. And we learned from our actors. we're even contemplating doing a reading in the next weeks. I don't know how we're going to do it, but
You're going to do it, Jimmy.
huh?
How will you do it?
How we, socially distanced, but one of our supporters runs the Poconos Mountain Music Festival in Buck Hill, Skytop in Pennsylvania, and loves our show and wants to present it outdoors.
Okay.
I don't know how we're going to rehearse and with my New York cast or get them there, but we're going for it. I don't know. We're going to see.
Thank you for attending today. Next week, we talk with composer and jazz pianist Valerie Capers. Join us at 3 p.m. on our YouTube channel.